This is the Information Project. I'm Sean Plunket with you through till 10 o'clock this morning. Don't forget, you can listen to the platform via our app, which you can download at the App Store or the Google App Store. And you can become a Platform Plus member, which gives you a little bit of easier access or offline access to our content and gives you columns and access to columns that is better than the normal person. So Platform Plus, please sign up and help support open, tolerant and free media in New Zealand. We, of course, also have heaps of merch, T-shirts, cups, caps, hoodies, notepads, pens, and every merch order from the platform website or page, web page, every merchandise order comes with a free bumper sticker, or two if you ask nicely, to be honest. All right, look, our next interview, we're going to move on from this, I guess, this big picture discussion we've had this morning about New Zealand and its mojo and this worrying trend of not just rich entrepreneurial New Zealanders leaving our shores or leaving the country, but trained, qualified people from all sorts of trades and professions, particularly in their mid to late 20s. By the statistics we see leaving this country, and perhaps the need to reinvigorate ourselves the way a country like Ireland has. Oliver Hartwich was pretty hot about education when we talked about what needed to change in this country. And as you know, if you're a regular platform listener, we have for some time been banging on about mobile phones and the amount of time all of us spend on them, but particularly young people. And we've always had amazing reaction when we have had shows and when I've talked about the accessibility of cell phones in schools. There is no national policy on this. There is now in Australia and in most states in Australia. But we find that a lot of schools in New Zealand are saying you cannot use your smartphone during the day. It's handled at the desk and handed back later, which I think is a good trend. Because it would appear, and research is showing, that social media, which is accessed through the cell phone, is really messing with our kids' minds. And we are joined now by a researcher in this field, Dr. Samantha Marsh. She's a senior research fellow at Auckland University in healthcare. And she has been basically sounding the alarm on this as well. Do you mind if I call you Samantha, Doctor?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, Samantha, firstly, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem that we're unaware of. Just take us through what impact social media is having on young people and where is this most acute, at what age group?
Okay, so a lot of the talk at the moment has come out because there was a Surgeon General's advisory, which was released in America in June or May, I think, and it kind of got buried in New Zealand. But basically, it was, the head medical doctor in America who was raising an alarm about this and saying this needs immediate attention because it's a massive public health issue that we're just not addressing. And they did a big review of the literature. So this isn't looking at a single study or just talking to a single person. This is, comprehensively looking at the literature around the impacts of social media on youth mental health. And what they found was that there was a few benefits in marginalised youth communities, those youth saying that helps them to connect to people, and a little bit of evidence of them able to seek help online. But what really came through very strongly was all the negative impacts on social media on youth mental health. So we've seen increased rates of depression, anxiety, poor sleep, cyberbullying, low self-esteem.
Self-harm, suicide?
Yes, definitely self-harm, decrease in life satisfaction. And then, we're also seeing now, and this is pretty new, is that the social media seems to be changing the structure of our children's brains. And so that really gets to the point that you were, talking about at what age. And this is why it's so important.
So you're saying it's having demonstrable developmental effects on the brain?
Yeah, so you can see it. We can now see structural changes in kids' brains.
Yeah. Does this interconnect at all with the work of Jonathan Haidt, who I know has visited here, and I've read some of his stuff, and he has looked, I guess, in a slightly different context at cultural changes that can be linked with the rise of the smartphone in a generation of Americans and the harmful effects that's had?
Yeah, so both him and Jean Twenge, so she's a psychologist in California, they've started to put together a huge ongoing review and collating every single study now that's been done in this area, and they're both of them have been kind of pivotal in raising the alarm about this and looking at the research in this area.
All right, Samantha, what do we do? Because I don't think anyone and any parent, and even I as an individual, have looked and had to deal, to be honest, with what I would call what has been, and probably a year ago I really seriously addressed this, an addiction to social media.
Yeah, so, it's not recognised as an actual addiction as yet, but that doesn't mean it is. As I said, we've seen the structural changes in the brain. We know that the way that social media is designed is similar to slot machines. It's all got the same psychology behind it. And, in New Zealand, I think this is a huge issue in that, the government doesn't talk about it. Nobody really talks about it or is raising it as an important issue that needs to be addressed. Whereas, as you said, we've seen overseas, so not only is Australia and various other countries now banning smartphones in schools for good reason, but just last week the UN came out with a report saying that they believe that smartphones should be banned globally in schools. And then, we're in New Zealand and we've got the Minister of Education saying that she's not going to ban smartphones in schools. And I think we need conversations about this. I think we need to know why we think in New Zealand we know better than the rest of the world about this.
I guess philosophically, Samantha, I would think it is so self-evident and obvious, I would expect, and many boards of trustees have, and this is an issue, strangely enough, at dinner parties and socially, I talk about a lot because it worries me personally a lot, the effect I see it have on people. A lot of schools are banning cell phones now.
Yeah, they are, and that's, but the problem is that if we have some schools doing it and some schools not doing it, that is inevitably going to raise equity issues. And we, if you've got some kids benefiting from the remove, and there are benefits to it, research is beginning to show that there's less distraction, there's less bullying, school grades go up. But then we've got other schools who aren't doing it, that's why it needs to, we need a New Zealand policy on this. We need to do something about it. And it's not going to solve all the problems, but it certainly would give our kids, a good 6-7 hours a day where they are forced to just be and not have these constant distractions, not being able to talk to each other face to face and interact with their teachers. Yeah.
Samantha, we're talking about this, though, in a culture... And I was to say there are some other issues we should think about. The economic impact of families of paying for mobile phones. Yeah. Okay, it's a huge expense. And the opportunity cost of being on your device, the things you do not do in your life because you're on your phone, because you're scrolling. Yeah,
and that's actually hard to measure in a scientific study, but it's what we're missing out on and what our kids are missing out on that is also really important. But we can look at what we do know, which is we know the things that adolescents need in order to develop appropriately. And, these devices are interfering with natural processes and things that we know they need. And that's also a problem, but very difficult to quantify.
Has there been any... And the problem is it's a kind of integrated industry. You have the people who make the phones and sell the plans, and then the people who make the apps that, people get addicted to. Is there any industry recognition of the addictive nature of the smartphone and the internet?
There is evidence, of leaked reports and things like that they know exactly what's going on. But also there are people who have left, have been working in the industry and have left the industry and have raised alarms about this. And also there's one group in particular in America who are, working if we have these devices, how can we make them appropriate for children? How can we make them so that they are positive and not all the negative things with the addictive, all those behavioural things that we know that they're doing.
Is it going to be like the tobacco industry, though? Are they going to cover up the negative effects in the interest of their corporate greed?
I can't say that for sure, but what I can say is that there is some, as I said, some evidence that is what is happening. But I mean, we know what's going on. We can see it in our kids, and I think that's and I do struggle with this a little bit, that the burden has been placed on researchers to prove that this is harmful to our kids. Yeah. And there is no burden of for companies to show
I
that
think
it's
you
safe
talk
for
to
our
anyone
kids.
with a modicum of common sense, and we know what the issue is.
Exactly.
Is there any effective therapy or treatments? Is anyone developing counselling for social media addiction? Because that would seem to me, if there is this problem, and I don't doubt that there is, how do we cure it or fix it? And I just say I literally have seriously, consciously confronted this myself. So I've got an app uploaded now every week tells me my screen time. And I will look at that and say, have I a good week or a bad week? Where did I go wrong? Why is my social media up? And I'm trying to limit myself.
I can't talk to what individual psychologists or psychiatrists are doing in this area. There's very little research that has looked into what works and what doesn't work. But I come from a public health background, so my view is, rather than focusing on the treatment, and, that's going to be hard for a lot of kids to access, psychologists are just, they're all booked up at the moment. How do we prevent this from happening? And how do we help kids across the board? And that's when I think we need to be seriously having these conversations as a country, within schools, within, parents with their kids and with other parents and their groups of friends. Why are we so scared to delay giving social media to children when we know what it does? We know that it's showing to be very harmful. We know that it's addictive. And our current response in New Zealand is to give it to kids, but then teach them how to monitor it. I mean, it's an addictive device, and also teach them how to deal with the negative content that they're seeing. I mean, it just seems completely wrong to me and inappropriate to be putting that onto our children.
Samantha, I couldn't agree more. And I think actually the first step is people like you calling it out. And then starting a real debate on this. And I've got no doubt that in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to be a massive issue. And we are going to have to confront and deal with it, because its negative effects will start to impact on the next generation of people, and it'll feed through. I think it already has, personally. Has any
100% has.
Yeah. Has any political party engaged on this yet? Has any government department seriously engaged on this issue yet?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that when this report out and it was sent to the parties, they came back with some interesting responses, which kind of danced around the area a little bit. For example, Labor, said that although their manifesto commitments for 2023 haven't come out yet, social media platforms offer connection and reconnection. And I think, that's a direct quote from Labor. We're still dancing. I mean, I think this is not okay when presented with a report that's showing that this impact on our kids, and that's what the government's saying about it. We should be furious. We should be furious about this. Our children.
We're also busy clutching our pearls over vaping, Samantha.
Yes, that's a different issue.
It is it right? Well, let's make a comparison. What do you think poses a greater threat to the health and well-being of our kids now and future generations, vaping or social media?
I can't say. I mean, this is my opinion because I don't work in the vaping area, and I do think vaping is an important issue, and we do need to address it.
But we're kind of onto that.
Well, right now, I feel that social media is a huge issue, and it needs addressing, and it is. I see it every day. And I don't understand how other people, I mean, I think everybody can see it, but I think it's a problem that people think is too hard to solve and that the horse is bolted a bit. But I don't think that, I mean, we could have said that years ago about smoking and stuff, but we just chipped away at it for many, many years, and I think that social media is probably going to be very similar, but I don't think we should give up on this. I think our kids deserve better than that, and they certainly shouldn't be the ones that are asked to solve this problem for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think you're ahead of the curve on this, Samantha, and fighting the good fight. I thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you.
That is Dr. Samantha Marsh. She's a health research fellow at the Auckland University, and she's calling it. She says social media is an addiction, an addictive substance delivered through your kids' cell phone and your cell phone as well, your smartphone as well. Let's not kid ourselves that we're not on this crack cocaine of social media as well. And you know me, I'm against suppression of, regulation. I'm against people being told what to do. But this is an addictive substance. I think you should be able to say what you want on the internet, but I've been there. I'm a recovering social media addict, I think I would say, and I've got to do it because of my job. But I have in the last year or two really, really taken some active steps to try and get off the phone because I was just living in a pretty unhealthy place. And we've talked about this on the program before. I think there should be a blanket ban on cell phones, on smartphones in schools. Let's make it easy. Let's make it so the kids can't argue and they can't talk back, right?